I've seen people around on social media argue this idea that if humanity was to wake up one morning and there was like a global apocalypse where we all had amnesia, if we were to wake up one morning with a blank slate, no memory of what has happened, what would come up again and again? What ideas, what concepts? The answer is what separates ideas that are contingent and particular from ideas that are universal and determined. First, realizations. Depending on how much we've actually lost of our memory, the first drives are all biological. Just like every disaster movie you've ever seen where they wake up with no idea how they got there, they start investigating. Humans need food, air, water, shelter, and medical care. If any of those needs are limited, there's only a few options. Basically just rationing and fighting over stuff. If those needs are limited, you're in a state of war. Work together and be fair, or be opportunistic and rapacious. Now, everything starts at a defensive level when new people are introduced because there's no agreement, there's no social contract. So physical determinism sets forth the situation where our best reality evolves out of a state of war. And if a social contract can't be solidified, then cooperation can be balanced sort of tentatively through mutually assured destruction. Social structures. We see the immediate need for a balanced morality. It's directly related to our survival. It reduces risk. Our physical reality is determined. Principles and directives can evolve from those crystalline possibilities. Every time I've eaten these berries over here, I've gotten sick. Nobody should eat these berries. Other people will get sick if they eat these berries. We should teach others to stay away from these berries. Aversion to death drives principles, cooperation, and useful narratives. We're forced to explain to our children in a way that won't scare them or send them into a depression spiral. No doubt the truth can be depressing, but we have to weigh the consequences of telling them a gentle, balanced narrative against their eventual transition in the future to truth and reality. This is where ideas become particularized and contingent and not likely to come up again in other global amnesia scenarios. Narratives will always be based in physical reality because they have to maintain a certain coherence. Although sometimes we see that things like miracles try to play against the determinism of physical reality, sort of maximizing the fantasy power of the narrative. I'm personally against this because it's not pragmatic, and at some point it deviates away from what will actually aid in the survival of the individual. It turns its back on a future pragmatic transition to truth later in time and just goes all in on fantasy. This is where the structural crutches to deal with death become addictive and they drive destructive behaviors. So identity particulars like nationalism, classism, and religion compete at an equal level for space as universal notions like good and evil, or good and destructive behavior. These narratives subvert being as the universal human identity and feed the lizard brain. The more particular and exclusive, the more lizard brain reward there is, all the way to the absolute identity particular extremism that ends in the death of the other for the highest reward for the lizard brain. Let's not kid around. The most people killed equals the most reward. And going down this path is basically species suicide, as those who lose their mind in these identity particulars are working hard to destroy all of humanity indirectly, the other. Even within the groups themselves, there are extreme individuals who think people in the group are not extreme enough, forming conflicts, schisms, and basically group suicide. It's evil in a universally deterministic sense. It adopts the destruction and exclusion of humanity at its core. The adherents are oblivious to it because they hit it sideways, and they don't check the consequences of their actions. And the consequences are destructive for others, and often they don't care because they're insisting on principle without watching consequences. So I think we're in a transitional stage in human existence. Basic ethics crystallizes early on. Then narratives are added to deal with very deep, unanswerable existential problems. So technically speaking, there's no hard problem with subgroup particular narratives teaching what is ethically right and good, as long as they derive their goodness from universal determinism or basic objective reality. Universal determinism is what goodness emerges from, and the idea that each individual is an end in themselves. The problem emerges when identity subgroups lose sight of the deterministic universe universal ethical emergence, and the momentums that they teach actually create unethical action up to and including killing of the other. This would be unnecessary killing. It's the death of the other for the comfort and identity of individuals within a certain group. And those individuals will turn on each other after the other's gone. So you have to think, if you're going against universal goodness for identity, particular affirmations, you're going against a greater human goodness. This implies that your identity particularity, where it deviates, is actually criminal. This is exactly why identity particular groups cannot be involved in government, because they involve particularity, which biases justice, and it ceases to be justice and just becomes an authoritative, opportunistic body. People won't stand for that, and the universal insistence never goes away because it emerges out of reality. If we ever wake up with global amnesia, what's good and what's destructive will arise again and again out of determined physical reality. If you like this kind of philosophical subject matter, help us out by liking the video and subscribing to the channel.